Hi everyone, Zach here, and welcome to lesson 48 in this series on developing a survival game. In this video, we'll finish working on our custom resource spawner. As a side note, the thumbnail that I used for this series was taken after the original recording of this video, meaning that by the end of this video, you should be able to set your landscape up to look like what's in the thumbnail. That said, this series has been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors, and with all of that said, fire up your projects, and let's get started. Hi everybody, and welcome back to the editor. In today's video, we're going to finish our resource spawner so we can use everything that we've been working on. So let's just get ahead and get started with this by going directly into our BP resource spawner and go directly into our spawn resource function. Let's select this function and we're going to create one input for this, and it's going to be of type resource, if I can spell, resource detail, or details I guess, and it's going to be our F resource spawner details. All right, so we go to our start spawner real quick before we continue. Let's just plug that directly in. And this resource details comes from our array element. And this is going to be our inner loop. This is actually going to be a looping function. So we're going to tag this as our inner loop, or the fast loop. So let's say we have three different things we have to spawn. We're spawning 3 different trees, and we're spawning 15 of each. So tree 1 comes through, goes, I need to spawn stuff. This has to run, this inner loop, 15 times before this loop then iterates to the second tree. Then that tree has to do its 15 loops, and then it comes back here and goes to the third tree and does its 15 loops. And when that's done, we are completed. So we can return from there. All right, so let's go to our inner loop here. And what we're going to do in this inner loop is, well, we're going to first get a lot of information. So, and we're going to create a lot of local variables for this to work. So first what we're going to do is pull from this, and I want to give myself a bit of space, and do a for loop. Not a for each loop, an actual for loop, which yes are technically faster than for each is, but since we're not creating an array, this is what's going to work. We're going to then take off of our density here, our resources, and we're going to break our resources. We need all of them, by the way. We're not hiding any unconnected pins in this one. And we're going to take our density here, and we're going to do an integer minus an integer. We're going to take 1 away because we're starting at 0. So if we want to spawn 100 in and just plug from here, it's going to spawn 101. 0 to 100 is 101 digits, whereas 0 to 99 is 100. All right, let me just... I'll leave that space. We're next going to come from our resources here, and we are going to promote this to a local variable, and this will be our resource class local. And we're going to just plug that into our loop body, so we're going to reset this every time we go through this loop. And let's just bring this down here. In theory, it should remain the same. I mean, we really should only set it probably out here, but I'm doing this just to be a bit on the safe side. All right, then we want to do our random amount local. So this will be a local variable called b random amount local. And that can go directly into there, line that up, and put a reroute in. We're going to be using a lot of reroutes to make this just easier to read, but unfortunately we are going to have crossing wires. Line all those back up, and then we're going to do a min amount local, a max amount local, and let's just go pin the min in real quick up here. You can see how tiring this is going to get probably. We by the way, are not promoting all these to variables, so do not go and try to get ahead and promote them all to variables. I mean, you can if you want. It's a bit pointless to do so. I'm just going to tell you that now. We don't need them all as locals. We do need all that information, but we do not need them all as local variables. What we do need to do is keep lining them back up though. All right, honestly, I'll tell you, if you want to get ahead, everything up to here is going to be a local variable. So, you know, is tree tip going to be a local? Yeah, I'll make it a local variable. This is something I've added in since the last recording. I figured a better way to do this based on our structure, and that changed the spawner. I kind of mentioned that this might change how we do our procedural spawner ages ago, and this is going to be B is tree type. And all this is doing is going to limit some of the stuff we have later on. I'm just going to put a reroute there. And then we're going to have our allow random rotation. So promote to local variable B, a random rotation, local. Again, let's just bring this out this way. Put a reroute in. Plug the executes into each other. All right. And then we have our scale setting. So this is our scale, scale setting local. Sorry, I thought it was a boolean for half a second for some reason. And then we're going to have our scale x local. So scale x local. Unfortunately, the local we attached to the x there. Scale y local. And finally, our scale z local. So let's take these 4 nodes. Yeah, 4. I can count, I tell ya. And drag them out this way. And let's just start plugging them into the correct spots. So that goes there. I'm going to put a reroute here. Don't worry about lining the reroutes up yet. We're just going to start pinning these into each other. And then we'll take care of the daisy chain of our setters in a moment. And then take care of the daisy chain of our reroutes. Actually, there's no daisy chain of the reroutes. There's just take care of the reroutes in a moment. I feel like I might be using the word daisy chain in the wrong way right now. All right. Oops. Make sure not to select any of the reroutes. I'm going to bring these all up here. Plug that into there and line those up. Now, I'm going to select everything except for the setters, the loop, all the reroutes in that -1, and I'm just going to hit Q to line them all up. There we go. We have a nice little line of our locals that we need. Okay, now comes the fun part. And this is a slightly recursive approach. Okay, it's completely recursive. It's a bit, I'm not entirely sure how to explain this until we do it. What we're going to do is we're going to do a line trace. We want to make sure that where we're intersecting, we want to find a random spot in our volume. We want to make sure that that random spot intersects with the ground, and we're going to move everything towards the ground to do so. If for some reason it doesn't, let's say we create a massive spawner, and I'm just going to drop one right here on my map. I'm going to raise it up a bit. I mean, none of those would ever hit the ground the way we're doing the spawner, but let's say we create a massive spawner that's spanning that gorge. Let's say it's really tall as well, really wide. I'm going to actually move this a little bit further up, so this makes a little bit more sense. All right. What we're saying is we only want to spawn on the grass, let's say. We want to spawn on grass here, all the way down to here, and the grass here. Well, this is never going to return anything valid. We're going to hit nothing because it's not in the spawning volume. There's rock here. There's a bunch of other things that aren't valid spawn locations. So what we're doing with this is we're saying, hey, if you don't hit a valid location, try again. But the thing is, and this is why I brought this up early on when I talked about recursion and avoiding infinite loops, we don't want this to keep looping indefinitely. It's really hilarious to do so if you have a good enough computer, and I've done it. It takes about 5 minutes for it to run through enough loops before it crashes. Sometimes a little bit longer. It doesn't crash the engine. It finally just kind of stops doing what it's doing. It goes, I'm done. So we want to avoid creating an infinite loop. But first we need to get a random area. So how do we do this? Well, as I mentioned, we're going to do a line trace by channel. So we are going to find a spot using a line trace. And the way we're going to do this is say on visibility, we're going to ignore self, and we're going to create our first sort of sub function. So we're going to create it out here and then collapse it down. So we're going to take our spawning volume, and from our spawning volume, we are going to get world location. And from our spawning volume, we're also going to get our bounding box extent, or scaled box extent. Sorry, not bounding box extent. And we're going to do get scaled box extent. All right. And I'm just going to bring that down a little bit. Put that there. And because I want this to line up nicely and neatly, and I'm being really pedantic. All right. There we go. I realize they're not the same length, so it's a bit meh. From there, we're going to get random point in bounding box. So that's our origin is our location, and our box extent is our scaled box extent. So from this, what we're going to do is we are going to draw our line. Now, it isn't just a matter of putting this is our start point, and let's draw it down. It's anywhere in that volume. I wish I hadn't deleted the volume. So let me just grab a volume again. Drag this up here, and I'm just going to set the scale to 10, 50, wow. Sorry about that, to 15, or sorry, 150 by 150. Okay, let's make that maybe 50. And let's just rate, okay, 15, there we go. So it's going to find a spot anywhere in here. So it could be all the way up here. It could be all the way down here. It can be all the way over here. Anywhere in the height of this volume and in the width and length of the volume. So we can't just draw down. We have to draw up as well. So the reason why I say this is, hello, we're underground here. We need to draw up to find the ground. So we're going to draw up by doing a vector plus vector. Let's put a reroute into this. And we're going to draw up by, I would say, 250 Unreal units, just to be on the safe side. We are going to do a vector minus vector. You could do the plus and just change the negative symbol there to a, or sorry, change this to a negative 250. But we'll do it this way. And this is going to be 250. So this is the function right here. And we're going to take this top one, and that's our start point. And this is our end point. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to select these nodes, collapse to function. This function will be calculate spawn line trace. It is a pure function. The outputs will be our start vector and our end vector. Let me just move this up here for a moment. I so prefer this version of Unreal for having that little symbol. No one can't convince me that 4.23 isn't the best version. It's the one I have the least bugs with. All right, let's pop this open. And all I'm going to really do is just grab all the nodes here and lower them slightly. That's all. All right, so what we're doing for this first bit here is, okay, thanks Unreal, is we are calculating, or gets random location in volume. And then we are checking above and below spot to find ground. So check above and below spot to find ground. What do I mean by spot? The random, gets random location. I'm gonna put the word spot in quotes here, so or in brackets, so I know what I mean by spot. All right. So this also is going to be one of our sort of master functions. Actually, I'm going to call this a calculation function this time around. So we have a few calculations we're going to do, by the way. So once we've done that, we want to make sure, have we hit something? So we're going to do a branch here. If we haven't hit something, then we're going to have to talk about how we're going to iterate back through and come into here again. But we'll talk about that in a moment. And we're going to it's sort of creating a for loop with a break. It's kind of fun how we'll be doing this. So kind of fun. It's kind of confusing, to be fair, but it works well. So that said, the next little bit we have to do is we need to see what we've hit. Now, this only matters if we aren't saying it can spawn on everything. So we're going to have another branch first. And this is going to check, are we allowed to spawn on anything? So let me just start commenting. We'll comment stuff out later on. We're going to take our spawn on all surfaces and come out this way. and plug into this second condition here. And I'm just going to put a reroute in and bring this reroute down a bit. This is, yeah, unfortunately kind of messy. And select all these nodes with the shift key and hit my Q key. So they all line up nicely and we get this nice neat line to that branch. All right, if we're allowed to spawn on all surfaces, that makes our life easier. We're just going to go forward and start spawning our actor. And that's kind of our endpoint. We have things to actually do after that. Really isn't our endpoint, to be fair. But we need to have somewhere where we're heading. This is where we are heading. This is the overall goal of what we're trying to do. Okay, so let's talk about these falses. We have 2 falses we have to address. This one's the easier of the 2, by the way. So the first one I've already mentioned. We need to check another location, and we're going to have to iterate through. The second one is we need to check if that's an allowed area. So we're going to create another function. And let me just say this one is a bit, not complex, a bit tiresome to do. So we are going to simply do a, we're gonna get from our out hit here, a get surface type. And remember, this returns the enum value of our surface type. And so we're going to do a switch on e surface type. And notice, oh, there are all of our surface types. I'm going to plug that directly into there. And now I'm going to collapse this to a function called check allowed spawn area. All right. And we're going to, in this one, just very quickly have all of our spawn areas in here. So we're going to have a whole bunch of inputs that are type Boolean. And so we're going to have be dirt. Yes, be dirt. Be dirt like me. Be grass. Insert joke here that probably get me demonetized if I make it. Be mud. Insert, that's bad pun, joke here that would definitely get me demonetized. Be rock. Okay, also same concept there. And be sand. I don't have one for that, actually. This is going to be really messy. We're going to ignore default, and we're going to put a branch in. And if it's dirt, there's our branch plugging from the dirt, we are going to say it's valid. And we're going to have a return. And the return is going to have one bool value called B area is valid. We're only going to have 2 return nodes, by the way, to make this really easy, but also really messy all at once. Put a reroute in. We're going to give ourselves a bit of space for that. And then we're going to just line everything up. And then we're going to just duplicate this branch over and over again. Plug the true into there. Plug the grass into there. And duplicate these 2 nodes. Plug the mud into there. And plug the execute into mud and rock. Mud goes into that one, rock into that one, and if it's true, it all goes into that reroute there. And then finally, one more of these. All right, and this is going into our sand, and our sand Boolean goes into there, and if that's true, that goes into there. Now we're going to take this reroute, or this return node, we're going to mark it as false, and we're going to plug that into that one there. And again, I'm just going to, that did not work the way I wanted it to work. But I can select these 2 nodes, hopefully, and do that. There we go. That's what I wanted. I'm going to put a reroute there. See if I can line those up. And I'm going to start plugging all the falses into that one. So that if it's hitting that area and it's not an area that's allowed, we're saying this is not a valid area. So let's compile, save. Yeah, I know the spawn actor is none. Don't worry about that. We'll take care of that later. All right, and now here comes the really fun part. We have to start taking these booleans and bringing them to the correct spot here. So is dirt, and I'm gonna put a couple of reroutes into all of these as I go. Is grass. And trust me, you do want 2 reroutes in this one. Is mud. So it's, yeah, this is really how we're checking. And this, by the way, in terms of thinking about abstraction, we're doing a lot of abstraction in this in terms of what's really going on. We're using the names to remind ourselves more than anything. But we're also learning a bit about abstraction in a different sense. This is how the procedural spawners, that we're going to be using in the next few videos actually work, the ones from Unreal. Of course, they have more features in it that we're not including, but that's just because, well, yeah, they're not easy to include. All right, I'm going to select the reroutes, and I'm just going to hit Q. See, one of these always does that, and I've never worked out why, and it just drives me up the wall. But the funny part is, kind of want to go down to that one's level anyway. There we go. And now, to be really pedantic, I'm going to line them all up on that one axis there. That way, they're just a bit easier to read. And I'm going to lower this one a bit. There we go. And I'm actually going to line them up on that axis. Ooh, no, undo. Leave that there. I'll take care of moving them all in just a moment, because I'll move them as a group. And then we're going to go to this axis for this one. This is literally just so this is a lot easier to read as we get further into this video. Because trust me, this one is going to be a bit difficult to read. There we go, that spacing isn't too bad. We're going to actually increase the spacing on these last two just a tiny bit, if it will let me. Thank you. And there we go. Okay, so with that done, enjoy the reroute show. We're just going to bring those back up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now that we know if this is valid or not, we need another branch. Yep, I'm not joking. So if it isn't valid, we're going to have to go into this set of this false as well. If it is valid, then we can go on to spawn whatever we're working on. So let's put this reroute in. Let's go into that, from that true into there, if it's valid. So now if it's not valid, we are going to have to create a variable that we haven't set yet that is going to check how many times we've done this line trace. So we're going to create a new local variable called count check local. It is of type integer. By the way, before we did that entire line thingy, I was about already 15 minutes in. We're now 22 minutes in. So like I said, the last video, when we got to 20 minutes, I'm like, we're stopping. This is the reason why. I already knew how long this was going to take outside of me doing all that stuff for the reroute. By the way, it does get a bit wonky when you're up close. I don't quite understand how Unreal works with that, but whatever. It's not a huge deal. All right, I'm just going to lower this down this way because I know I'm going to need something else off of here. So first thing we're going to do is, if this is false, we're going to increase our check. So I'm going to get my check amount here, and I am going to actually do a increment integer. I said actually because I just realized I need to move these Boolean reroutes. They are too high up. I know it's not really all that important for what we're doing, but I want to give myself a bit of space, and I want to give myself a bit of space in here. So first things first, if it's not valid hit area, if we didn't hit anything, we're going to increase our count, and we're going to put a reroute in here because trust me, you really, really want reroutes for this to work. And then we're going to come off of this, and we are going to check, are we above our max amount we're allowing? We're going to do this search 11 times, by the way. So we're going to have a branch, and in this branch, we're going to get our count check. We are going to check, is it equal, so is it equal to 10? Remember, it starts at 0. 10 to 0 is really 11. We're giving it 11 shots to do this. If you want to make it an even 10, then make that number 9 or make that number 1. Either or, don't do both. Otherwise, you are going to get not what you expect. All right. So if this is false, then what we are going to do, so if we are not equal to this, we are going to then go back all the way over to our original line trace. So in other words, we haven't hit the max amount we're allowing. So we're going back around into our line trace again. So there's this is the recursive part. we're being recursive in the fact that we are going back through here into our line trace until we hit this state, and then we are going to fall out. And that's when we go into the next item in this loop. So we don't do a return, by the way, because the return is actually off the complete here. What we're doing really is saying break out of this loop at this point. So if we did a for each with break, or a, can we do a for loop with, so basically it would be like this, and we would be coming off and hitting, oh no, it wouldn't be like the break, ignore me. So basically all this is saying is we've fallen out of this part of the, this iteration of the loop, go on to the next iteration of the loop. That's all that's happening. Do not put a return node anywhere else but off this completed, or you will have issues. Okay, so that's the first check we have to do. The second one is if we have hit an area, but it's not spawning on everything, and this stuff is hit, if we want to say we want to spawn on grass only, and it's hit rock, it's not valid. Well, we need to come out of here, and we need to increase our count check again. Instead of creating that variable again and the iteration again, all I'm going to do is plug into that reroute there. Now, that looks really hard to follow, right? Let's put some reroutes in and make this a bit cleaner. I'm just going to bring this reroute down here. I'm going to put another reroute in down here, and there we go. We have a little bit of a racetrack going on. So we can see that we're coming in, doing one thing. There we go. This makes it a bit clearer, I think, having those reroutes. So that's the bulk of everything we have to do. Now we actually have to, or in terms of our checks, now we actually have to spawn the thing in. And this can be a bit tricky as well. So first things first, let's find our resource class local here. And that's what we're going to spawn in. I'm going to just set this to the side for a moment. We are going to tuck it underneath, don't worry. For our spawn, we're going to do default, just because we don't want to worry about collisions. And next what we're going to do is we are going to come back here to our out hit, and we're going to pull off this way. And we're going to do our break hit results. Okay. Break hit. Pull off of there, plug into there. I'm not sure why it wasn't letting me do that earlier. And we are going to take our impact location. Okay, we can tuck this under here now. We're going to take our impact location, and we are going to make transform. So there's our location. Plug that, by the way, directly into there. We can now compile and not have a bug. Now for our rotation, this is where it gets a bit interesting. So we're going to do a select node, and we are going to first do B is tree type as our check here. If this is true, then we are going to calculate a tree spawn rotation, and this is also where it gets a bit interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to have another select node off of this, and we're going to collapse this one down to a function, by the way. And in here, we are going to have a few values. Now, we're going to leave the false as 0, 0, 0. Actually, you know what we're going to do is we're going to get a Boolean, and we're just going to do random rotation local, plug that into there. Leave this node over here, by the way. Just trust me, leave it over there because the way we're going to collapse this down. So if it is false, if we're not allowing, it's a 0, 0, 0 rotation. Now, if it is true, we are going to make rotator. All right, from this make rotator, we are going to do a random float in range. And it's going to be -10 to 10. Now, we can't just plug this into all three of these, because if we do, it's going to give you the same value. So we're going to have to duplicate the node twice. So that's the second one, and our second duplication for our third node. And for this one, we're actually going to change the value to 0 to 360, basically spinning the tree. It can spin in every direction. What we need to limit is this. We need to limit how much it can roll and pitch, which is why we have the is tree type check there. All right, so this is going to be our, instead of making this really, really messy, we're going to collapse this down to a function. And this is going to be our calculate tree spawn rotation. And it will be a pure function with a spawn rotation return. Okay. Now, fortunately, we can make our lives a little bit easier here. And what we can do is we can duplicate our calculate. I'm going to put this in the calculate folder, or calculation folder. We can duplicate this for our other functions. So I'm going to call it food because our herb is one of our food items. I didn't mean to find references. I meant to duplicate. So it's going to be our calculate food spawn rotation. And let's just go back into this first one we did, and I'm just going to move these nodes up. There we go. And do the same in here. And all I'm going to do outside of that is I'm going to change the amount I'm going to allow it to rotate. I'm going to give it more freedom to go from -30 to 30, -30 to 30, and still 0 to 360. All right, let's go back to our spawn resource, and let's get our food rotation. So if it is not a tree type, that goes into there, and this can address both if that is true or not. I'm going to just actually put this there. These go here, and that goes there. All right. That was part of our transform. We still have a bit more to go for our transform, don't we? We have our size. So for our, I just realized something, and this is really, really important. I actually realized this a few videos back, like back in section 2. We need to go back to our item master real quick. This is a really small fix. Go to your actors, items, item master, and let's select our maybe it's an item master. Okay, I'm just going to double check our ResourceMaster. Hopefully it's in our ResourceMaster. It is. This node that was spawned needs to be instance editable and exposed on spawn. And now we need to compile this real quick, refresh this node. There we go. And that was spawned. We're going to leave marked as false for a moment, or yeah, it's false for a moment. All right, sorry about that. I just realized that we have to come back and actually put that in. So our scale is fairly simple. We are going to create a new function. We'll create it out here, and then actually, no, we're going to just go ahead and straight on create it, I think. I'm just trying to think the easiest way to do this. You know what? We're going to create it all the way down here, and then we'll collapse it down to a function. So what we need to do is we need to pull from the scale first real quick, all the way down here, and we're going to do a select node. All right. So our select node, this is going to be a bit different. We're going to take our spawn scales or scale setting local, and that is our wildcard. So we have 3 options here. I'm going to just move this all the way to the side. So this one we have, let's do our free first, because that's probably the easiest to think about. Let's just do a make vector. And what we're going to do for the free is we're going to do, again, a random float in range. And we're going to do this 2 duplications of it, so we have 3 copies. Okay. So we now are doing free in terms of we're changing each of these 3 axes freely. And we have min and max here. Well, we also have, if we take this node here, and I'm going to just drop it all the way up there with the scale setting, because that's going to stay outside the thing. And we break this. We have a min and max on our x local. Just want to make sure I had grabbed x. This is our x, so we plug that into there and that into there. We can do the same for our y. I'm actually not going to worry about moving them for a moment. We're going to break our y and plug that into y. And now I'm going to do my z local, and I'm going to break my z local, and plug those into my min and max here. All right. Let's just bring those up there now for now. The next one that's probably a bit easier to do is the lock x and y. So we'll do another make vector, and I am going to just duplicate 2 of these nodes this time, and this is going to go into the x and the y, and this one's going to go into the z. So the x and y will get the same values, and I'm going to take off my x here and plug into min and max for both for the top value, and then for the x or z, I'm going to take from the bottom one here because that's my z1. And then finally, we need just one of these. Now I'm going to change something I said in the last video. They're all coming from the x value in this case. So I'm going to go back to my structure real quick and make sure that I've put it in that way in terms of my tooltip, because that is how I'm going to do it. So structure, go into my resource spawner details, and that is under my uniform scale setting thingy. Did I put any text in there? Determines x scale for both x, y, and for uniform determines all values. Of course, I just spelled values wrong, so let me retype that. Values. There we go. All right. So that is how we're calculating this out. This is really messy looking, I realize. So literally, x does everything in our uniform. X does x and y in our lock x, y, and z does a z, and in free, all of them get their own. So we're going to take all these nodes here, and we're going to collapse this down to a pure function called calculate scale. It is a pure function. It goes into our calculation folder, and we're just going to call the values here our scale x, our scale y, and our scale z, and this will be our scale setting. Before we move this, let's pop this open and clean this up a bit because this hurts my soul so very deeply. All right, there we go. There really is no way to make this nice, neat, and organized. Sure, somebody's going to comment that they know a way to do that nicely and neatly and make it look pretty. Or say use electric nodes. I'm not going to use electric nodes on a tutorial because people are going to get confused and be, why do your node looks different than mine? So yeah. All right, let's go back to our spawn resource, and we can now move all of these underneath here and line them up a bit better than I just did. That goes there, that goes there, that there, and that there. And let's move this all the way up here. So this is our transform stuff. Literally, all we've done is transform. We still have other settings to worry about. Yeah. At least we did the hard part, right? So what we now have to do is get our random amount local, and that goes into the was spawned, really. Elsewise, it's going to use the default value we put in. And now we have to calculate our random amount. So we're actually going to use this node twice. So I'm going to put this to the side. And again, we're going to take from this amount local, just drag down here and do a select. Okay, so for this select, I'm going to use a golden trident one. Our wildcard is the Boolean. If it is true, we'll do a random integer in range. We get our max amount, that goes there. We get our min amount, that goes into that one. And if it's false, we are going to come off of here and plug into the false there. All right, let's take these two nodes, collapse them down to a function. This is calculate base resource amount. Remember, they're getting spawned in. Actually, we're going to break this. This is true. They're getting spawned in. So this is really the base resource amount. And we are going to make this a pure function. We are going to get rid of option 0 because, okay, I'm not sure why it's on that. We're going to do max or default. Min will just be min, and this will be b is random. And let's just pop this open. And in here, let's just move this over here, move that there, and that goes into the false. There we go. Let's go back here. Wow, we have a lot of these now open. And that takes care of actually spawning the resource in. Of course, there's a little bit more we have to do. And even at 41 minutes, we're not done. I am trying to get us through this entire function in one go. There is a lot, I realize. So next, what we need to do is we need to do two things. First, we need to check, is this valid? Have we actually spawned something in? Because we can still fail out if the collision isn't, if it doesn't spawn due to collision. Next, after that, what we need to do is we need to check, is this a tree type? Or is it being polymorphic? All right. If it isn't a tree type, nothing, it's done here. We're done at this point. If it is a tree type, we need to move the tree slightly. So what we're going to do is come off of this return value here. Let's just line those up a bit better. And I'm just going to pull straight across. I apologize for that. And it's set actor location. Plug into the tree there. We are going to teleport the actor to that location. And we're going to pull from here. And we are going to get item mesh. From item mesh, we are going to get socket location. What socket are we getting? Root. This is why they all had to be named root for the tree. And then we're going to move our location there. Okay. Wow. That was a lot of work. Let's test this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to delete the current spawner I have right there because that's just terrifying. I'm going to grab a new spawner to put onto the map. And I'm going to just do one right here. This is where I kind of regret having the player start all the way down there. I'm going to set this to 10 by 10. Set this to 2. All right. This one, I'm going to put one resource in. It's just going to be one of the herbs. So we'll do the herb small 01. Of course, there is a step I skipped. Very, 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 very important step. For anyone who knows me, you already kind of know what that mistake is. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our construction script real quick. And hopefully we can do this on our construction script. We are going to check spawner. We are going to also put the calculate into the, this is going into master for now. We're going to put all the calculations into the calculation folder. And then once we have checked the spawner, we are going to start the spawner, assuming it's valid. All right, let's hope this works. All right, I'm just going to move it and, all right, well, we might have a bit of an issue, but we will do a random amount from 1 to 2. It is not a tree. We will use random rotation, and I'm going to set this at 0.25 by 1.2. We will do free, by the way, just so we can test that out. 0.25 by 1.2, and this will be 2.5 by 1.2. We'll allow it to spawn on grass. That was the first issue, by the way. And we're going to just do a print string here real quick to make sure this is actually running the construction script. Compile. There we go. So it's running, allegedly. We're going to do our first test by right-clicking over here and doing play from here, just so we don't have to hunt this spot down. All right, so we're having a little bit of an issue. One thing we can do is we can go into our start spawner, go into here, and find our line trace. And all we're gonna do is persistent. Hit compile, and we can see that we are hitting the ground allegedly. Let's hit play. Of course, I've just done that from the wrong spot, but whatever. There'll be lines up there for me to find. Hopefully. Oh, I was going the wrong direction. We're gonna come back here, hit play from here. All right, so it looks like we're having a little bit of an issue. I'm just gonna check I set the spawner settings correctly on the outside, because knowing me, that is my, yeah. Let's just do the large herb real quick just to check something. Set the density to 100. So it definitely is gonna be visible. I'm using the large herb because it's easier to see actually. All right, so I'm gonna debug this and I'm gonna pause the video while I do so. All right, I got it to work. Unfortunately, I thought I had worked away around one of the bugs that had been there previously. Move the check spawner and start spawner to your main graph. Create a custom event. This will be spawn resources, or trigger spawn resources. And we're gonna plug that into there. We will go into the spawn, go into the resource spawner, get rid of the persistent, put it to none, go to the event graph, and it's trigger spawn resources. Fortunately, we can't do what the Unreal version does, and if I hit play, or if I hit play from here, we will get our large herbs in just a second. There we go. You can see that they're growing. There's a bit of an issue that I made too large of a cluster, so they're floating on top of each other, but yeah. So we're able to pick up our large herbs. We can eat it. Mmm, tasty. All right. Now I'm gonna just reload the map to avoid some of the weirdness going on my screen right there. So just gonna open my island map back up, which I'm currently in, and then I'm going to take this spawner and I am going to just move it over this way by holding the Alt key down to make a duplicate. And I'm going to expand this out. There we go. And I'm gonna move it over here as well. Raise it up and expand it this way. And then this one, I am going to change this from our current type to a tree type. And oh god, I'm gonna set the density like 5 just because that's a small amount. This is a tree type. It is going to lock the X and Y for this one because otherwise they get really weird. And for that, I'm actually going to increase this to 1 to 1.5. I don't really need to change this, but I'm doing it out of paranoia. And for the height, it goes from 0.75 to 2. We will allow it to spawn on grass, and we will hit play from here. All right, and there we can see our trees are spawning in, and we can pick up wood. There were 18 pieces in that tree, and there's our stump. Why did that only give me 2? Give me a second. Discard. We're gonna discard 5 of these things, a ton of these things. Okay, well, I should be able to move a little bit now. No, okay, so I can't. Okay. Discard. There we go. All right. Interesting. Okay, so we have one little more thing of cleanup to do. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna work out what's causing that one. By the way, I didn't even have to debug it. I just went in here, into our TreeMaster, found our override on our event pickup, found the spawn wood debris, right-clicked it, did refresh, and the was spawned in node pops in. Mark that as false, and that takes care of that issue. But now we have resource spawners where we can add in multiple resources. So just really quickly for the final little bit before I head off, I guess, and let you do whatever you're going to do next. Let's just spawn in tree04. And we will use random rotation. It's a tree type. And we will allow it to spawn on grass so we can see that different tree types are spawning in. And as that's loading up, remember this series has been brought to you by Patreon sponsors like Rian, 1Volt10, Hanas, Quadmenson, Connor, and Galois. And if you want to be here when we explore other methods of spawning in resources like our trees and herbs and start populating our island so that we can have more things on it and so that there's more variety and things look a bit nicer, and how we can use some of the things we've created like our randomizer, then make sure to hit that subscribe and notify icon. If you've enjoyed setting up your island so far, if you'd like, hey, we have spawners at work and we have trees and resources and carrots to eat, or carrot-like things to eat, then make sure to hit that like button as well. All of that said, I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.